Chapter 7. The school building had arched doorways and red brick panels. The steps were in front and trouble was behind them. Sean, spitting the bucket more, was our guiding hand in all things educational. He said we were brothers born out of national heroism, brothers born from a fighting people, brothers born to beat the English in football, boxing, and everything other than drinking. We were to address each other as brother, because we were not only good Irish Catholic brothers, we were Dublin working class brothers. However, everyone called him Spit in the Bucket, the name we baptised him with, not to his face, mind. I was late. I walked up to the classroom door. It was opened, so I peeked into the room. The priest was there. He had a firm grip on my pal Deco's hair. The priest dragged him out as I slipped past him. I crept to my seat, while Spit in the Bucket turned his head to spit in the bucket, as was his habit. Now, there was nothing in the clergyman's character that would promote the priesthood. He was heavy-handed, mean, and a man who took great pleasure in calling us the great unwashed prisoners of tomorrow's jail. The brothers who ran the industrial schools called him every now and again, saying, "Look out for a few more boys. We'll be letting a few go at the end of the month." That is what they did. Together they ruined the worship of heavenly things and made no apology for it. The priest marched back into the classroom. He was furious. The whispers around the class that morning was that Deco had kicked the priest's ankle and ran. He told me he'd do that someday, but I didn't believe him. Deco made a bad move because the priest paid us a visit every Monday. When he came into the room, he recognised Deco straight away. "I want to see good behaviour. Show these pups nothing but the cane. Teach them good manners. They will be established through the principle of good educational and old-fashioned punishment. You'll beat it into them." Reaching for the cane above the board, he pushed it into the side of Spit the Bucket's face. "This is the way to teach these boys. Use it well, sir. I want to see nothing but change." Deco strolled back into the classroom, laughing. The priest's eyes ran him as if they'd feet of their own. He growled. Crossing the floor, he took hold of Deco's ear and beat him about the head. Deco, who was as thin as a twig, tried to run. The priest kept hold of his collar, pulled him to the ground and clattered him some more. Spit in the Bucket stood at his desk, having witnessed the dispute. He smiled. He seemed happy the way the priest brought a resolution to the disagreement. "The father is right," shouted Spit in the Bucket. Taking the chalk, he wrote on the board, "Discipline is the rule of today and every other day." Deco jumped to his feet. The priest sprinted forward. Spit in the Bucket's eyes were on us. He threw them to the ceiling when the priest muttered something. They bounced back into his head and landed on me. Deco kicked the priest in the leg. They both ran, first Deco and then the priest, hot on his heels. Wild as Deco was, he had the good sense to stop fighting and stood with his hands held high. Hunger was a great assistance in overcoming weak boys. This was something the man of the cloth used to his advantage. A tool he deployed many times before. There was no doubt he would use it again. Silence and the sudden agony of childish grief informed us that the police had arrived. From that moment, Deco would receive breakfast, dinner and tea. In the home for boys, for this blessing, he'd be beat about the head and body until he was mad enough to be cast back out onto the streets. Spit in the Bucket repeated his remark. He accomplished this by underlining the words written on the board. The importance of what he said was emphasised by his round finger, which he tapped on the table. The significance of what he said was supported by his angry voice because he roared, "Discipline is the rule of today and every other day." Spit in the Bucket was a man of learning, a man who said one thing and did another, a man who loved reading, storytelling and talking, a man who would talk, big, small, it didn't matter. All that mattered was there was plenty of talk and he was the one doing the talking. "Let me tell you, boys," he scratched the bottom of his nose, "every lofty human creature assumes the earth had its glorious moment the day they arrived." He scratched his teeth with his nail. He performed this action by driving his finger diagonally. "Alas, alas, good sirs, but you boys don't think such thoughts." He repeated the same action, only this time his movements were horizontal. "Why, may I ask?" He spread his fingers, both hands, onto the table. "That is a superb question." He leaned forward. "Poverty suppresses wants and hopes. It decreases senses and notion. In the soul of man, making the possession of bread, milk and tea the highest value. Poverty yells at you, user of small worth. Ha ha ha. Liar, liar, pants on fire. The day you help another is the day of distinguished honour. Let no man fool you." From the moment I got there, I hated it. We heard about the famine, the rising, the civil war and the Pope. That was it, nothing else. Oh, the English, and how we should never trust the English, the black and tans, and heads rolling in the streets. So by the time I had enough of talk and beatings, abuse and fights with kids from the inner city streets. Chapter 8. After a long tiresome morning, the bell rang. I walked to the door, took a lungful of air and darted down the steps. To top off the worst day ever, I saw Dad. He was lying on the path. The surrounding kids giggled. I remember thinking, how brave they are. Nobody laughs at Dad up close. I didn't tell them he was me Dad. I pasted a smile on my face like them. The children ran. When he dragged himself from the ground, I stood in shock. He rubbed my neck and shook my head. His whiskey-smelling breath was making me sick. Everywhere me Dad went, the same stench followed. He fell, his arse landing on the steps. Spit in the Bucket came behind, asking me what I was doing, talking to drunken fools. Before I could answer, he gave me a clatter. Yeah, big clatter, what? He never seen Dad before, and he would never see him again. If he knew how violent he was, he wouldn't have wanted to see him at all. Dad stayed quiet, watchful and incensed. The man who charged, smashing, crashing into hardened men was about to pounce. In contrast, Spit in the Bucket was a learned fellow. He was oblivious to the mindset of men like me Dad. He spent hours teaching mathematics, sharing patriotism, reading O'Casey, Joyce and Beckett. Me Dad was mean and hateful, an outcast, reared from the muck. He put his hand behind his back and muttered his song. Me ma carried me by the banks of the old green river. Me ma carried me under the shadow of tattered buildings. Me ma bore me in the cage. She watched me grow to see me rage. He whistled and staggered in front of Spit in the Bucket. Shoo be off, Spit in the Bucket muttered to me Dad. Dad's eyelids moved in slow motion. Then his face appeared, the face that said more than a million words. Could I call it Dad's angry face? No, I cried in controlled whisper. I yanked his jacket, but he brushed me aside as if I was a fly. So I watched Spit in the Bucket being punched and kicked and left into a bloody pulp. The sound of the school bell ringing sent my head into a spin. The day grew bleak, the clouds turned grey. Me Dad loomed over his victim. He faced me. Penny for them, son, a penny for them, Frankie boy. He cleaned Spit in the Bucket's pockets out and staggered away. I looked at the sneering faces and decided, that's it for me, and I ran. The streets were wet, the air was damp. Robbers emerged from the underworld and settled on a corner. A woman watched a step at the doorway while dockers hiked up the avenue. An old person sat on the pavement and fixed his shoelace. You could smell the despair. The atmosphere was steeped in it. The inhabitants walked in it. 1,000 faces saying different things but singing from the same hymn sheet. The melancholy, the sad, the broken and the hardened who scurried along the streets in all weathers. The passing shadows like silhouettes in my mind. There's a mother on the corner and a youth running with a gash in his head. Another one is fleeing from a copper, and a kid in short trousers is climbing a wall. On I go, never looking back. School is out today, tomorrow and forevermore. I saw the dog. He had a loaf of bread in his mouth. I was hungry. I tried to get it from him, but he wouldn't let go. Another stray attacked him, so I crept over, grabbed the bread and retreated into a tenement. I had myself a feast and dry, half-eaten bread. Peeking out from behind the door, I watched boys in shorts being dragged by coppers into vans. I knew those lads, they left school too, so the courts sent them away. I needed a plan. We heard bad things about those schools. I said to myself, Frankie, you're never going there, ever. For the best part of the day, I pulled my knees to my chest, crying, fearful of men in clogs and monks' dresses who carried leather belts and did things to boys that were told us in whispers. Wiping the tears with the back of my hand, I mumbled, No, Frankie, you're never going there. Ma would stop it. The mother screamed, Run, Jan, run. The Lord is here to take you to the carts. There's nothing sure that they'll send you away. Run, love. The door opened and the sound of feet clattering off every step came at me like a stampede. I jumped and noticed a ragged boy race onto the cobbles. I ran too. Throwing a glance over my shoulder, I witnessed the coppers pull him to the ground and beat him. His ma came down the steps with a shawl on her head. She was crying over her son, born into a world that gave him no other chance other than the one he had now. And that was to run for his life. The working class boys were born running. The boy never came back. He had an accident. A few weeks later, fell off to his death. We heard stories that the brothers had interfered with him and fired him off a roof. They buried him in the grounds, consoling the parents with hugs and tears. On the 2nd of October 1942, the court sent me to Letterfrack. It was one of Ireland's most notorious homes for unruly boys. However, I was lucky on my first day there because I only did a few weeks. Ma wrote to the court saying she was taking me back to the States. She went here, there and everywhere talking to this person and that. I don't know what she did. But I was glad because I was out. The day had breathed its last as I stepped onto the streets of Dublin. People had gathered outside shops. On Ayr Road, men stood smoking, playing cards. There were others on the roofs playing the toss school. Men in caps and turned up trousers laughed and joked while kids danced. Real life played out like a drama. The narrator backstage, his animated characters alive. As the dark nights pulled the curtains over the stage show, the streets fell into a silent hush. I sat in the room, my joy vanishing as a blazing revelation came home to me. I was a poor boy sitting in a room in the worst slums in Europe.